No, I like that more than I thought I would. So, I'm gonna save my little hunks of newspaper from earlier. Gonna put him right there. Then, now we're gonna do the mugs. The coffee mugs will probably go quicker because they're smaller. That was 3 pounds of clay, that vase. The mugs tend to be between, a pound and a quarter to a pound and a half. Pound and a quarter leaning towards a pound and a half. I like a substantial mug. My mug at home is huge. It takes almost an entire, can take almost an entire 2-cup French press, which is what I use every morning. So I like big mugs, and I cannot lie, as the song says. But I make these a little smaller than probably what I would make for myself most of the time. So, my bat down. These are all a pound and a quarter-ish, leaning towards a pound and a half. So I'm gonna throw this. Sometimes I do a straight-sided mug. Lately I've been doing one with more curves. It just depends on what photos and I've been watching and what videos I've been seeing and kind of what's in the forefront in my mind. So I'm just getting my clay centered up. And then opening up my clay. Squeeze a little water in there to get started. Maybe still moving my wheel pretty quickly, but I'm definitely slowing down. And I'm just getting the basic body thrown fairly fast. And again, whoa, wobble wobble. I'm making that, always pressing down and out with my finger to make that little ridge, to make sure I'm not leaving clay in the bottom. It's real easy just to do this, and that's what gives you that. But do this, and that's what gives you that. It gives you instead of that with your wall of your piece. So, whoops, that's a little dry on the inside. Okay, so this is, like I said, this is going to be a substantial mug. So I have found over the years, as my throwing skills get better, I can pull things thinner and be more efficient and use more clay. And so I find that I don't need as much clay as I once did for certain things. So I'm probably approaching that with these mugs at this point. And I'm just pulling this up, making sure I have as even a wall as possible. And then I'm gonna pull this in a little bit. Actually, I think the model for this particular shape that I've been doing lately is probably Robin Hopper. I have a mug that I recently bought of his. I bought it off of eBay. I sadly did not buy it directly from him before he died, but I bought it off of eBay, and it is very similar to this shape. And I found that mugs are a great thing to collect more than anything because there's a lot of craftsmanship that goes into them, and I like the idea of functional pottery and things being useful. So I like to have in my I like mugs in my collection because I can use them all the time. And it sort of makes me think of the artist and all of that. And it just makes coffee and tea taste better. And it's in a handmade mug. I always say that. So, but I'm just making this shape right now. Nice shape. You also, on a rim of a mug, it works best if it's not a purely round rim, like a perfectly arched rim. If you can make it sort of at an angle, peak at an angle that's sort of the shape of your lips that they would make as they go around the rim, it actually makes it easier to drink out of, which is a nice little sort of functional touch. And it's something I try to do. I'm not always successful at it, but I try to do that. I was being very conscious today on this one of keeping my rim just thick enough that I could do that. And I do a little trimming on the bottom, which will then, when I then turn it over to trim it, to finish the job, will make it very easy. That little tiny bit of clay, no big deal. That sponge good. Then I use my sponge. And there's a mug. And, you know, people always ask me, yeah, this is, also keep in mind there's going to be a good, probably at least 15% shrinkage, meaning as it dries and goes through the firing process, it's going to shrink and become smaller. So whenever people say, how big should I make something? I always say, make it bigger than you ever think you would need or want. And then by the time it's finished, it'll probably be exactly what you want. So there's that mug. I'm very happy with that shape. So there's that. So we'll do another one. I'll do a different shape so y'all can see a different shape. And I think I'm gonna go for some new newspaper as well. So I'm just using just good old newsprint. It's nothing fancy. That there, put that there. If I didn't have this, I would really be fighting this bat because it would be moving on me the whole time. Every time it spun, and it would throw everything off center, so. And these mugs, like I said, I'll do a video showing my carving that I do when they're a little drier. It's something called leather hard. And I'll do a video showing me pulling handles on the mugs, which is kind of interesting. So I'm just opening that up. And I really make sure, like I said, I make sure I really push out with that my middle finger to get that right angle in the bottom of my pot here, of my mug. So I can pull up as much clay as possible into the body and not leave clay in the bottom. You kind of get to the point where you can tell if you've left clay in the bottom because you pick the bat up off the wheel and the piece feels heavy. I threw a tall candle holder the other day. I think it was like 2 or 3 pounds, and it was very tall and light as a feather. In fact, I was a little alarmed at how light it was. So, but I kind of, you know, if it's, I like things to, you know, the light is a sign of good craftsmanship, but at the same time, I don't want my work to be so like delicate and paper thin that people don't want to use it. So. But with stoneware, I feel like you can only get so thin before it starts not wanting to cooperate with you anymore and get too soft and you can't work with it. See, and I'm even pushing out on that bottom, down in the bottom just a little bit to not only to stretch that out, but just to give the mug more the shape I'm looking for. I've got a couple of tiny little air bubbles. And sometimes you get air bubbles. I mean, that's part of the reason you wedge clay. Wedging is like kneading bread, but you wedge it in large part to get air bubbles out of the clay. And sometimes you miss them, especially when they're teeny. And so you just take your needle tool and go in there and pierce them to get rid of them. And because they can cause trouble down the road. And then all I'm doing with this one is pull that rim in a little bit because I want to get a little more of a very subtle curve. And this mug is going to be a little more up and down. I have a little more taper on it. Like everything I make, it's going to have my signature carving. There's very, very little that I make that doesn't have carving. Lately, my bowls don't have carving on them, only because I feel like, for the most part, with a bowl, you see the inside, and you can't really see the inside. I don't want to carve because I don't want food and cheese and whatever else you put in there to get stuck in all the grooves. But I don't want to carve on the outside necessarily because you don't really see that, because the outside of a bowl usually is facing down. So lately in my bowls that I've made recently, within the last month or so, recently, don't have any carving on them. And I kind of like it. There's something that's a very very spare simplicity to them that I like a lot. And I feel like my forms are pretty simple because the carving takes up a lot of your eye. So I feel like it's a simple form with a lot going on the surface, as opposed to a busy surface with a busy form with busy surface. I feel like there needs to be a balance between the two. So I'm just swabbing out the water in the bottom. And that's totally different shape. I like making these too as well, this shape. And cut that little bit off on the bottom, which will make it easier to finish the trimming later. And what I usually do with these, when I take the bat off the wheel, I'll put this on another slowly spinning wheel head with a fan on it so that it can dry just enough that I can go ahead and cut it off the bat and pick it up and put it on a wear board so that I can cover it up and come back to it later and let it get leather hard, which is halfway dry. It's still wet, but it's dry enough that it's easy to handle, and you can still carve on it and put handles on it and do whatever you need to do. So, but I did the same elongated lip on this one. Let's see if I can pick that up and can see it a little more closely. Now I'm going to do one more. I see this is turning out to be a long video, and I apologize, but hopefully it's informative to some of y'all, if not all of y'all. Do one more, and I'll even do a different kind of shape for this one. So there's 3 different shapes. This one is going to look a little more like your traditional diner coffee mug. A little more up and down with a slight concave curve. Pulling up those walls, making sure I'm getting that right angle down in the bottom, or that groove down in the bottom, so I can pull up a lot more clay and not let it get wasted down there. Because 1.25 pounds to 1.5 pounds, that should get you a really nice, substantial mug. So that's, you know, it's when you don't end up with something very big, it's usually kind of heavy. And depending on what you want, if you're making them like for a restaurant or a breakfast place, you actually want it to be thick because they really take a beating. And you really kind of want it to be heavier and on the smaller side. But you're making them for just for using at home. They're usually not going to go through the same beating. Just getting that nice groove. And then I'm going to use my flexible rib to smooth out that nice curve. Give it a little bit of an uneven rim there. But you know what? I'm going to leave that. That's not going to hurt anything. And that was a quick one to throw because it's pretty simple. A pretty simple shape. And then when it's leather hard, I can cut it off the wheel and kind of clean it up a little bit, the bottom up. And then do my carving. And I do the carving and then I put the handle on. It just seems easier to do it that way. I haven't figured out a way to do my carving and have it look the way I want it to. I guess I need to stop and think about that some more. But it's easier just to do the carving beforehand and just attach the handle. Okay, and that's it. That's 3 mugs and a vase, like 4 weddings and a funeral, but really different. So that's about it. Thanks so much for watching.